A place with the world at their fingertips. The National Library, opened on 12 November 1960 by the young Pertuan Negara Yusuf bin Ishak. The week that followed was declared National Library Week. There were talks and exhibitions on books. The idea for a library was first mooted by Lee Kong Chien, a well-known philanthropist who donated $375,000 to the library building. In 1955, the Public Works Department threw out plans for a T-shaped brick building. The design was wholly functional, with 3 main sections for the children's, adult lending and reference services. The project cost $2.5 million. It was built right next to the museum on a site that had been occupied by the British Council. The library had its beginnings in the Raffles Library, housed in the museum since 1887. Only English books were available, catering to the British expatriates and to the English educated. There was a 3-tier subscription fee, and though it was not expensive, it did keep the general public away. In 1958, however, subscriptions were abolished with the implementation of the National Library Act. Within 12 months, membership grew 1.5 times. The new library building was completed in 1960, and books were moved over in November the same year. Many hands helped in the effort.
There were about 50 staff at that time, and we formed a human chain because the old library was not really very far from the new library. And we packed up all the books in parcels, first of all, and we worked out where all the parcels of books would go, to which rooms, and so on. And then we, passed the books in this human chain from one to the other. And it took us about a week or so, and then rearranging the books on the shelves and getting everything tidied up.
Unlike the former Raffles Library, readers found themselves with ample room. The National Library was ready for business, even if some furniture had still to arrive.
So when people came in, they said, well, where are the seats? Are we expected to read standing up? I said, yeah, the shelves. And people came out of curiosity, just as, they do today. Whenever there's a new building, I think people rush to see it, like Changi Airport or other things. And at that time, of course, it was a big new building. And people just came and walked around and looked at the books. Not all of them joined.
But getting more members and more books were just what the library aimed to do. In 1959, it had begun to buy Chinese, Malay and Tamil books so that there would be books for all, not just those who could read English. In 1960, non-English books made up only 14% of the total collection. By 1970, this had risen to a third, and today, half the books are in other languages. To select books in the different languages and to promote their use, bilingual staff had to be hired. They were hard to come by. In those early days, few people could read and write in more than one language. Children were frequent visitors to the library. The 1957 census showed that only half our population could read, and most of the literate were young people. There was a need to increase literacy and encourage the use of reference materials, especially among students.
We wanted to develop the reference and information services because we saw that was very badly needed at that time, that people needed to be kept well informed. Those were the days, in the 60s when there was a great deal of political turmoil, what with merger and then, the battle for merger and then separation and so on. So the public had to be kept very well informed of government's policies.
To reach out to more people, mobile services to schools in the rural areas were started in 1960. was only one van, bought with a US $2,000 donation from UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, and it went round to 35 schools. This school service continued for 2 years. In 1964, the van went on the road again, this time going to community centres. By 1969, it went to 12 different locations. The van was a welcome sight wherever it went. With the adults away at work, most of the readers were children. There was little space for movement, so not more than 10 at a time were allowed in the van. Though small, the staff were dedicated. Mr. Chan Tai Singh recalls what they did when the van broke down.
There was only one van, so we had to probably charter taxis or ask staff cars to help, especially when they on the way to a service point, and we did not want to disappoint the readers. So we saw to it that the books arrived at the service point when it was supposed to start.
There were part-time libraries too. These were located at community centres and later in void decks of HDB blocks. They opened for several hours 2 or 3 days a week. The books were kept in cupboards or rooms that were locked up when the library was closed. The libraries had an ardent following. One of them was Asula Kwa, who joined the library at Siglap Community Centre.
I was a schoolgirl at that time, and I would be there promptly at 2, in fact, a little bit before 2, waiting for the doors to open. And then once I got in, I would make a beeline to the counter. There was only one librarian. We were only allowed to have to take 2 books at a time, so I would rush home. I lived directly opposite the library, so I'd rush home with my books and read as fast as I could. And about 7:45, I would be back in the library to get another 2 books, and this would be enough to tide me over for Wednesday. And then Thursday, 2 o'clock, I'll be back in the library again.
For those who loved to read but could not afford books, the library and its branches provided a free and abundant supply. The National Library played another important role in the students' lives in the 60s and 70s. Housing conditions were cramped and many used it as a place for studying. But in 1980, with home ownership growing, it was felt that most people could now study at home. Studying in the library was discouraged to make room for those using library facilities. In the 70s, the library expanded its role, organizing magic shows and talks. Gradually, it became a center for community activities. As literacy grew and housing estates spread, more libraries were needed, so full-time branches were opened in satellite towns. Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew opened the first of these branches in Queenstown on 30th April 1970. Nearby, part-time libraries were closed and readers transferred to these brand new, better equipped libraries. The Prime Minister described the Queenstown Library as a milestone in our rising standards of life. It was to be the first of many more full-time branches. Toa Payoh was opened in 1974. Marine Parade in 1978. Bukit Merah in 1982. Ang Mo Kio in 1985. And Bedok also in 1985. All these branches are linked together by computer to coordinate their activities. Computers also provide access to other libraries, both locally and abroad. Today, the library has become more than a place just for books. Tapes on dance, art and music are found in the Arts Resource Centre. Improvement has also meant specialization. In the Southeast Asian Room, an extensive collection of materials on Singapore and her neighbours has become an important source of information on the region. These changes are part of the ongoing development of the library, an evolution that grows with the people's needs. As our lifestyles change, so will the role of the library, providing knowledge for the people.